What's up, guys? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Creatives on Tap podcast. Today, we are in conversation with Rowan Stevenson from I Built the Sky. What's up, Rowan? How's it going?
What's up? I'm good.
I just also want to give a huge shout out to a mutual friend, Rahul Menon, who introduced me to you. So just
sweet.
big hi to Rahul if he's watching. And
What's up, buddy?
So just for you and the new listeners joining in on this episode, I just want to give you like an introduction of what this podcast is all about.
Cool.
So basically, the objective of this podcast was kind of to speak to creatives from different fields. When I say creatives, it also includes people with unconventional jobs and understanding their journeys and a series of decisions to reach this point in their lives. A lot of these people didn't even have these jobs as their end goal, and in fact weren't even aware of these particular jobs. So with this podcast, I hope to spread awareness of these unconventional jobs and shed some light on these special journeys taken by people like you, and also encourage people to follow what they feel their calling is. So people like you are at the top of their game. Hopefully someone finds inspiration from these episodes and do what they dream of doing someday. Let's just begin with the most basic of all questions. So let's just talk about how you got started, just a little bit of your background, your education maybe. Did you have playing music as something that you wanted to do at a very early stage in life, and why the guitar specifically as your instrument of choice?
So I guess I have some musical parents, and beyond that, grandparents and even great grandparents. Like my great grandma was a piano teacher. Mm-hmm. My granddad was in a brass band, and nice. My dad played guitar and sings. Still does, and also trumpet.
Okay.
So I guess there was a bit of musical stuff within the family. Mm-hmm. And so that's always part of it, I think. I started learning piano when I was in primary school.
Okay.
And then after primary school, I sort of switched over to do like classical piano and do the exams and that sort of thing, which was a pretty good way to learn like theory and that sort of thing. And I think piano is a good instrument to start on for music, I think, just for many reasons. I probably won't get into that right now. But yeah, so I learned that. And then in high school, I really wanted to learn the drums, but I think my parents weren't too keen on that idea, having drums
in the house
going on in the house. So we decided we'd do guitar instead. Mm-hmm. And that seemed like a pretty cool thing. A lot of the kids in my high school were learning guitar. We had this really cool guitar teacher at the time, so it was pretty appealing to do that. So yeah, I started learning guitar pretty quickly in high school, and then I just was addicted from pretty much straight away, I think.
Nice. And how did you get into this whole genre of the progressive metal, progressive rock, whatever you want to call it?
It's kind of an evolution. Like I sort of started off in the punk sort of stuff, listening to like Green Day and that sort of stuff. Blink-182, it was my obsessions in high school. First ever songs I performed were like Blink-182 songs and stuff. So but then I think it's fun. I like it when people show me new bands and it's like heavier, and there's a bit of like there's something about that when you've come across a new band that's really heavy that just really drew me in and just got me excited about that sound. Was obsessed with trying to find the new heaviest band. So
which was the first progressive band that you actually got into?
Well, I guess like bands like Korn and stuff,
Okay, yeah.
And then the progressive metal instrumental sort of stuff sort of came about later on when I was studying music after school. I studied, and I discovered like that sort of music that was sort of starting to happen, and that got me really interested in that sound. And now it just, I guess my taste just continued to evolve and stuff.
Yeah. What program did you get into for music?
Like recording software?
Okay. No. So you said you studied music for a bit.
Oh yeah. So I studied like jazz, popular music performance.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Oh, so that's where the chops came into play.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely pushed myself to develop my skills and stuff. And I was around a lot of amazing musicians and stuff. So yeah.
So how long was that program?
I was there for like 5 years.
Really? 5 years?
I was a bit slow on the uptake. So I think took me a bit longer. I went through all the courses, Cert 4 and then whatever. Just kept on doing those fundamental ones, and then yeah.
So how did IBTS come about? How did you start the project from the beginning, and why did you choose to start as a solo project? And how did that evolve to transitioning to working with other musicians also?
So ever since high school, I really wanted to pursue music as some sort of career.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in lots of bands and stuff, and trying to figure out how to make it a career. Many years of that and many bands, came and went, and I got frustrated that like it just wasn't happening. And I basically I built the Sky as a way to stop pursuing music as a career and just start doing it for fun and sort of making it a hobby instead of a career. So that's sort of how it started.
And why did you choose to get in other musicians involved in the project rather than continuing as a solo project?
Well, now it's still a solo project. It's just that if I perform with other musicians, or sometimes I'll do like one-off collaborations. So it's still, I have the freedom to do anything I want, basically.
Yeah,
so
correct. Yeah.
If I want to make an EP with someone, I can do that. Or if I just want to do a one-off song, or I can just do anything that really inspires me. So yeah.
Yeah. You started out in 2012, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, that's when I released the first song.
Album.
And
yeah. So I think around that time, there were very similar artists coming up at the same time that you put out your first album. So what was your strategy for standing out from all of this crowd with your music? And what would you say is your USP as IBTS?
Oh, yeah. So I think the thing that worked in my favor was that I was pursuing it as a hobby. I didn't really want to. It was just a fun thing for me. So I would just try and make music that I liked and was interesting to me. And that probably spurred some interesting output in that way. And I just wanted to make, good music videos and things like that on YouTube. So I did a lot of that, just DIY things, just go out with a filmer or, ask someone I know that just come with me and hold the camera. So that was happening. I think that was something that was what started the ball rolling, I think, with my videos on YouTube.
You learned all of this stuff yourself, right? Recording and video stuff and all of that.
Yeah, all of that stuff just through doing it and through looking at like tutorials on YouTube and stuff.
Yeah.
And just asking people that I know that, that use Pro Tools and stuff.
Yeah.
Trying to navigate that. But yeah, just if you do something long enough, you start to figure it out.
Did you have a genuine interest in learning all of this stuff, or you just didn't have a choice at that time?
No, I had an interest. I think my goals were my first goal was to release an album, because that had seemed to not happen with all the bands I was in prior to, which was upsetting because that was something I really wanted to achieve.
Yeah.
So that was my first goal, was to release an album. So I just recorded it, and I just thought I'll do everything myself. I'll make it a fun challenge and just do the best I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether that's to the detriment of the overall album or not, it's a hobby. It's fine. I'm just going to enjoy it. And that was basically my headspace for the first few releases.
So it's the first few releases were self-recorded, self-mixed and all of that?
For the first, I mean, there's 2 albums and an EP.
Yeah.
All of those were mixed and recorded by me.
Okay.
The third album, The Zenith Rise, was recorded by me and mixed by someone else.
Okay. So coming back to the last question I had, what would you say is your USP, or what do you think makes you stand out from the rest of the bands in the same genre?
I think I'm a bit more explorative with my sound. So I think people are now accustomed to hearing a fairly large range of song styles from me, like acoustic music or really heavy stuff or really delicate stuff or really complicated stuff and really simple stuff. I think I've got a lot of range in that respect, but I think for some reason it still has my sort of sound to it. I don't know what else. I mean, it's probably something that someone else could answer than me, because I just do what I do. And
I think I was actually thinking about this. So I feel like from the artists in the same genre, I feel like you're one of those artists that I can listen to one of your albums from top to bottom, and I don't even realize that I've listened to the entire album.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
it's
Yeah.
it's like one kind of flow, and
Yeah.
then I don't realize it's that smooth, right? Like I can just like listen to it in one stretch, and that's what I feel is unique about your music. I actually crave that from a lot of other artists. I can't really listen to an album in one stretch, even though I force myself to,
Oh, okay.
because
Yeah.
but I don't want to force myself to listen to an entire album.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
So yeah, you're one of those artists that I can do that without any difficulty, really.
Well,
I can
that's a huge compliment. So I'm glad that has that effect. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's what I would say is your USP.
I wish I knew why. Then I could consciously do more of that.
It's not something. See, there are a lot of similar aspects to the music with other bands, but I don't know. There's something about. I think it's some of the techniques you use guitar wise, and obviously I don't want to get into like technical stuff music wise. I'm not a music expert, so I can't get into that. Your guitar lines are more, for lack of a better word, like mature sounding. So I'm not sure if that's a good.
I actually have a bit of a theory about this actually, because I definitely, I think I find a good balance between something that's technical and crazy, but still kind of sweet and tasty.
Yeah.
So, and I think
Exactly.
a lot of that is, I definitely draw a lot of my melodies from like major scale. So if you create something
that's actually
the major scale, it's like it's familiar to the listener already.
Yeah.
And it's not testing you too much, like challenging you too much. But then I sort of throw in little things here and there and whatever. But maybe it's just that balance of not being too technical for the sake of being too technical. And being melodic and inviting.
It's like listening to. I can listen to Meshuggah for a long time, but after some time you get into like 3 3 1 2 3 like you kind of start thinking about the kick patterns and how all of that stuff. With your stuff you don't have to think about all that, so it's just, and I like the point that you mentioned about the major scale thing. So I think it psychologically keeps you in a positive, I don't know, it's a psychological thing maybe. So it just keeps the listener kind of wanting more of that psychological,
possibly.
Maybe. So I think anyone who wants to comment and let us know what you feel keeps you listening to IBTS, that'd be great. So let's talk about the challenges you faced being a self-produced artist professionally, and also like personally, that you find is challenging for you, and also finding like-minded musicians to support you during a tour.
That's actually falls into place pretty easy for me, finding musicians to tour with. I've got some friends that, like, you know, I've got a huge musical network, so that sort of falls into place, you know, pretty easily. The challenge is more availability and, like, you know, financially and stuff like that. So but being a self-produced artist, I mean, that's basically necessary. I need to be in control. I need to have the final say, and I need, that's just the way I work and how I want to do it. So I'm definitely open to suggestions and things like that. And I did sort of on the song I did with a singer, it's called The Fire Inside. Andy Sizik from Monument sang on that one. The guy that mixed that, Forrester, had some input on some ideas, you know, along the way as well. So sort of a co-producing situation for that one. Nothing like flipping riffs upside down or structure or anything like that, but just suggestions in making how to, you know, make the mix best it can be and stuff like that. So
what exactly did you have to change?
So that was like suggestions like you should add in a lower octave melody for this particular riff to help it thicken out a bit. And just vocal notes and things like that. Like we should try this melody, or this melody sort of sounds a bit too familiar for other bands and things. So why don't we try a different melody in this particular bit? Stuff like that, really.
On a like personal note too. So how do you cope when you're not getting enough motivation to kind of create? I'm sure you go through days where you just don't feel like picking up the guitar at all. So.
Absolutely. I'm just sort of coming out of one now at the moment, so that's pretty cool.
Okay.
I don't put any emphasis on it. I don't treat it like there's some sort of issue. I just roll with it. So if I'm not feeling like I want to pick up a guitar, then I just won't.
Yeah.
Until I feel like I want to, and I'm inspired enough to want to do it. And I think that's actually key to forward momentum, because if I was to push myself for long, for years and stuff, I would probably lead to me wanting to stop,
exactly,
all that sort of stuff. So I just roll with it. I don't stress out about it.
So what's your process for transitioning from playing at home in your own studio to kind of playing to a huge crowd with I'm talking in respect to being on the same page with the other musicians in the band who will be playing for your tour? So how do you go from rehearsing in your studio to rehearsing before a show?
Well, most of it just takes place individually. So I'll send off all the files so that like a drummer will have all the tracks without the drums, and they can just play along and figure it out. For the drums, I definitely let the drummer sort of keep the vibe of the sections and not necessarily learn everything note for note.
Yeah.
There's just no need for that. I don't feel. I think as long as it has the vibe and it gets the point across, and the cool drum stuff that drummers have, it's all unique to them. So that seems to work. That worked with my last drummer, Rob, as well as the drummer I had at my last tour in Europe, Andrew. So that works fine. And then I just do the same thing. I'll just play, with the guitar tracks removed, and just practice getting through a song, because that's something I don't do that much unless I'm about to perform. I don't have any real reason to play through songs. I'd rather spend time writing songs.
Yeah.
So unless I'm about to perform, that's when I need to start practicing, getting all those transitions in, and, figuring out the effects and what actual riffs I'm going to be playing, and getting transitioning into solos and stuff like that. It's just a matter of just doing it and just figuring out where you need to spend more effort in practicing. It might be a solo or a particular riff or something like that.
Yeah.
But you just spend time and you figure it out.
How much back and forth happens between, say, you and the drummer, or you and another guitarist, and how much time does that whole process take between tour? I'm sure if there's a stop, okay, do I stop here or do I stop so drummer has to figure that stuff out.
I think I just basically the people I work with are super high level, so they they know what's good, and basically if they have a question, they'll hit me up about it and we'll figure it out. Or if they have an idea or a suggestion or stuff like that, they'll just ask me, and then I'll just be like, yeah, cool, that sounds good.
So I'm guessing a month or two before.
Well, the last tour we did, the guys really had about, I think, 3 weeks max.
Oh, okay.
And I sort of had about a week to get everything ready to do the Europe tour. I was in America for a little bit, at NAMM and stuff like that. So there was a week window where I just did nothing but play the songs and figure it all out. And then we met up in Europe. So actually, I didn't meet the guys until I flew over to Europe, and then we got into a studio, and I think we had 2 sessions there, running through everything.
Okay.
It just everyone's done their homework. It should be pretty fine,
Yeah. So just 2 sessions before the actual tour. Okay, that's nice. Do you mind if we go a little more technical into the whole tour thing?
Sure.
So what do you think goes behind a successful tour? What do you kind of put into place before a tour, and what do you think every musician should keep in mind to achieve a successful tour?
I put a lot of emphasis on your performance being, great. There's lots of different ways you can go about it. Depending on the band, my music is pretty instrument orientated. So I don't necessarily need lasers and fireworks going off, I don't think, for it to be a show that people would want to come to, because I think mostly my audience is other musicians and stuff. So, but depending on your style of music, I'd say, you might want to really invest in having cool lighting and really cool backdrops and some sort of themes, and, really exciting opening to your set. You might have some really cool intro that you walk onto, and just treat it with a lot of importance.
Yeah.
Every show is it's important, and you want to give your
just
best.
put on a good show. Yeah.
Yeah,
just put on a
exactly.
good show. I mean, for the people that listen to your stuff.
Yeah, and just try to enjoy it, and if you do that, you'll do fine.
Yeah, and so not just in terms of music, like in terms of the financial part of things, how do you budget for different aspects of the tour?
Well, your expenses are somewhat mapped out from the beginning, so it's expensive, especially if you're using a tour bus and you're sharing between bands and things.
Mm-hmm.
That's very expensive. That's the biggest expense you're going to face, but that's also your accommodation and everything. So it's definitely like it's necessary costs, but yeah, it's a tough one. It depends on your situation. I was lucky to save money, especially because I was working up until 2019.
Okay.
So I could save money through that period, and I don't really spend much money on stuff. I don't have any other passions really aside from this, so I don't really waste money on silly things, cars or something like that. I've got a pretty shitty car, and I'm fairly fine with that. But yeah, I know of friends that have had to sell their cars and all that sort of stuff to make things happen. So you just got to do what you got to do and do what you feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
It's always a risk, and it's like you're basically a gambler when you do these things.
Yeah.
I have no guarantee that this will sustain me for the next 6 months even. So who knows? But
so like you mentioned, you were working till 2019. Do you mind talking about like what you're working as?
Yeah, I was a teacher. I taught guitar and music stuff.
So cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You're officially a full-time musician now?
Yep. Been a full-time musician since like August 2019.
Nice. So that's something to take away for people wanting to get into this. It's not easy to do it. It's not easy to just let go of everything and do something like this. Keep your job.
I feel like it's not easy, but it's definitely possible. I feel like hopefully I've proved that it is possible.
Yes, you have. Yeah.
So I don't think I'm special or more gifted or anything like that. I think what I've done is just I've taken a good pathway through to this point. So I worked full time. I spent my weekends making music. I made video clips. I invested in my passions, and then I noticed I was gathering momentum through those years. And then in 2019, I was at a place where it didn't seem that crazy to do it. So it made sense. It kind of made sense to do it. I really wanted to do it, and then I sort of had that financial, like, what's the word? Like, I mean, I had the potential to live off it, basically.
Financial freedom.
So it made sense. And then when I left off, I didn't I kept working hard on my music, obviously. I put out an album that people really enjoyed after that towards the end of 2019, and just kept working, and
hopefully someone learned something from this. One point of the last question: what would you say are the necessary expenses and unnecessary or not really necessary expenses for a tour? For a tour, like you really need these particular things for a tour, and the other stuff is not really necessary, but if you have it, it's cool.
I would say having your own audio tech is pretty high up there, because you can share like with other bands your audio tech, and maybe that can work. Right. But I think really you want to have your team that's all on your team, prioritizing you. So if you bring your own audio tech or hire your own audio tech, their job is all about you. I think that's pretty important. Anything to do with the sound and your music, maybe like equipment as well.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Like equipment. So
equipment, yeah.
You need obviously good equipment that's going to last and make the right sounds you need and stuff like that. And so sometimes backing track players and stuff like that. I would invest in that as well. Mm-hmm. I would, depending on your type of music, and that I would for if we were talking about a band like my band, I would say invest more on the audio and the equipment rather than like fireworks and stuff like that going off in your set.
Yeah.
But if it was a band that was more like a deathcore band or something, maybe they need to capture a vibe, and they have, and there's a big emphasis on the lighting and the banners in the background and that sort of stuff.
So let's come to your album cycle and the whole process when it comes to an album. So what is your decision-making process when it comes to hiring a team to handle things like, artwork, mixing, mastering, and how do you allocate the budgets for all of that also?
Oh, well, I mean, basically it's up to the people that I work with, basically. So they'll have their rates and things like that. So I got to figure out, okay, this person, there's no harm in inquiring.
Yeah.
You can say, all right, I want to do an album. How much does it cost per song or whatever? They might give you a quote.
Yeah.
You have to figure out, okay, is this what I want to do? Is this going to be the right person for this job? Is this budget within my reach?
Yeah.
And then just go from there, I suppose.
Do you have one aspect of that that's always like fixed?
It's still dependent. I know I want to work with Forrester again.
Oh yeah.
Of course. So yeah, and artwork. Yeah, I've got an artist that I really want to work with again, Pat Fox. So that's another guy I want to have involved again. But apart from that, that's probably it, really. In terms of the album and the recording. Yeah.
Okay. And what do you think is the most important part of the album cycle? Until, when I say cycle, it's the end is the release, and obviously the beginning is creating the songs, pre-production and all of that. And what part do you specifically look forward to?
Well, I think it's all important. So you want to make sure the songs are the best they can be, the recording qualities the best it can be, the mixing and the mastering sound is the best it can be. So I would make sure you take your time on those aspects and make sure it's right. Yeah. If it's not right, like that's what happens with bands when they're on like deadlines with record labels and things. Yes. They just have to do it, and there's it's out of their control a bit. For someone like me who's independent, I would just wait until it's right, because I know how much that would irritate me if I wasn't happy with where it was at before releasing it.
Of course.
So, and then I think really important to market and have a budget for marketing and spend money on promoting your album. Otherwise, people aren't going to hear it. Even if you've got followers, like social media only delivers to like 10%, 5% of your followers and stuff. So you need to spend money on advertising. I heard a band back in the day, they got a budget for their recording of like 50 grand or something from their record label. Okay. So they spent 10 grand on the recording and 40 grand on the advertising and the promotion of it. So
okay. Do you think that makes sense?
For sure.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge thing is,
I think that's actually a really cool
basically
strategy.
The people that you see,
yeah,
right, or you come across that they've put a lot of emphasis on marketing for sure.
Yeah. That's something that's missing over here. I think everything's like not very well planned out, and the marketing aspect is, I don't think, even existent over here. People don't think about that at all. They think about songwriting, they think about mixing, mastering also. It's not really important for them, or they don't understand it very well. But but the marketing aspect does not exist at all over here. It's like I'm going to post the song and then I'm done. So I'm like, well, dude, come on, like this.
Exactly.
There's a lot more. There should be some kind of a self-respect thing, at least at the end. Like you want your song or album to be heard by as many people as possible. And I don't think it should stop after just posting the song. It should be
totally.
I think that's where the actual work starts, really.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think marketing is huge, and I think that's where bands go wrong. They don't
concentrate.
They don't go the extra mile on that.
Yeah.
Like we have a really detailed plan for our release. So like, we've got a very detailed strategy. That's courtesy of Raul, who's helping with the digital marketing and things like that. And he's a guy that we hire to do the ads, and he like makes the ads tailored to certain demographics and things like that, and he'll sponsor posts to those demographics, and then once they've sort of had the budget go to them, then we spend on different audiences that and for different reasons and stuff like that. So I think someone like a digital marketer would be a really good investment.
I mean, he was involved in the Mishram album too. So so he basically did the same thing. He had a full plan chalked out, and this day we're going to do this, on this day we're going to do this.
Is that Project Mishram?
Yeah.
Are you the one that mixed that?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, that was amazing, man.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Really cool.
So the budget that was set for mastering was used kind of for the marketing instead.
Okay.
So I kind of did the mastering myself too, to kind of fit that budget.
Yeah.
So,
man, I think that worked, dude.
Yeah. Thanks. So,
I was really impressed with that, man. It was really cool.
Thank you so much, man. That means a lot. What do you think young bands and solo musicians can do better to increase their chances of being a successful touring act? Because I say successful touring act and not just musician, because I think in this day and age, it's more about touring, and that's where you get most of your real income from.
Okay. Yeah. I sort of have a different experience I have a different experience. So I think where touring, like, depends on the touring you're doing, because if it's international, then you're not really going to be making money off that, to be honest. You're going to be investing in that, and which I think is important, because that's part of marketing too. You can use video footage and images of that as part of your your marketing and stuff like that. I think at the end of the day, if your music's really good, you're gonna find that those other things will fall into place organically. So I would personally spend a lot of energy and a lot of emphasis on the music and all the parts of the music. So the mixing, the songwriting, the mastering. I think that's the most important part there. And I think if you're doing that, you're gonna collect an audience along the way. If your music warrants it, and you've gone through that process to make sure it's sonically good and all that sort of stuff. So that's what I'd say. I'd say focus on the music, and those other things will come along. And when they do, take advantage of them. Don't let them pass you by, because those opportunities might be, sparse.
Yeah. Correct.
So take advantage of it, and then you have to really decide. Okay, are we gonna? Because if you get offered a festival in a different country or something.
Yeah.
All right, this is getting serious. Like, you're gonna have to put up some money to get there, and that sort of thing, and you might have to sell some guitars, or I don't know, or borrow money, or I'm not sure. That's unless you're fortunate enough to have some savings or something like that. You have to play that hand and take that risk and that sort of thing. So
like you said, you might have to take a bit of a risk. You might not have the budget plan for that particular tour, but if you get an opportunity like that, don't think you should pass.
I think there's some strategies you could take, like doing crowdfunding.
Yeah.
Patreon and that, which I do a Patreon. Yeah. So that's been a really cool thing. Those sorts of things could work for you. Social media and just creating content in general. I feel like the more content you create, the more followers you have. Use that to your advantage, and like create like a Patreon page, or on YouTube. There's what's it called? Join thing. And yeah.
So, and then just whatever means, if your audience is willing to help you out, you're delivering something at the end. So as long as you're delivering your what you promised, it's
exactly.
So I think bands have a lot of options these days. I think you should make use of opportunities that you have to the best you can.
I think, and also everyone you see has probably been in that position where they've had to take a serious risk, and they've invested in themselves. And obviously you want to, if you don't want to make yourself homeless, right? So I would like seek advice and talk to your family and stuff, and And if you really feel like this is for you, this is what you need to be doing, and you've proven that you've got an audience waiting for you, then it's worth it.
One last question, which I feel musicians and bands over here struggle with. They don't know when to kind of transition from self-producing to actually hiring someone to do the stuff for them. So when did you, like, for example, when did you kind of know that you would just want to take that jump to hiring someone?
Yeah, I think for me, because I was looking at transitioning into this full time from my job. So previously, my mindset was like, I don't care what the end result's going to be. I know that it's me doing my best, and that's what I'm happy with, and that's what I want to do. That was a goal, a personal goal of mine, to get the best results out of my skills and just try that. But then when I was going to go into doing this professionally, I decided, all right, if I want to do that, my music has to be as good as, as anyone else out there. So therefore, I think it's probably wise that I get someone more qualified to do the mixing and side of things and really make the songs the best they can be. Rather than take, I don't want to. It was important that I made the right decision and make the music the best it could possibly be for that particular point in time.
Yeah, I think that's about the questions I had for you. I want to say a huge thank you for taking out the time to do this. I'll be linking your discography and upcoming EP that's about to release.
So that's 17th of September that it comes out.
Okay.
And first song has been released.
Yes, first song's been released. Check it out. I'll leave a link to that too. If you still haven't heard I Built the Sky, I don't know which rock you're living under, please do. Please.
What are you doing?
What are you doing? Check it out. So all the links will be available down below. Follow him on Instagram, whatever. I'll leave those two. Yeah. And thank you so much again for doing this. And I'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure.
See you.